Tell me a little bit about your first day on the job as a chaplain. Do you remember it?
Oh yes, I am not one who keeps a diary, and my husband, for a special birthday I had a year and a half ago, my husband bought me a beautiful notebook, and he said, "Why don't you write in it?" He's a writer, he's wonderful. So I said, okay. I never wrote in it. So I came home from the very first meeting that we had, our Cedar Park Police chaplains, and I wrote in it about the wonderful men that I met in that room. And there was one woman, Mira Fuentes, who's Victim Services. She directs that. And the fact that we could all come together and pray quietly and then, vocally glean things from each other that maybe you wouldn't in another room. With that door closed, it was just a wonderful experience. Not unlike what I experienced with rabbis or cantors at conferences and conventions. It was in a secular setting, but a religious connection. Very shortly thereafter, because I had told all of the Christian chaplains in the room that coming in as the first rabbi in the room, that I would work Christmas and Easter if they would work Rosh Hashanah and Passover. Well, Christmas came upon us shortly thereafter, and I was on duty, I was on call, and that was my first death notice. And it was a very sad situation. I came home and I wrote pages on how it developed. It was not only sad for the woman that was there, comforting her as her husband was laying dead in the next room, but for the officers that were there. Officers very young to me as I looked at them, who were alone, and it was Christmas night at 9:30, and I stayed. I could have left, but I stayed another few hours talking with them and asking them questions and realizing this isn't something I didn't need training for, because my husband had been an officer and I knew what it was like to be alone on a holiday, leaving your family and going to work. So I felt like it was a twofold blessing to be with this woman who I sat there and hugged and said the Lord's Prayer with her, and didn't matter that I was a Jew or a rabbi. That I was a female and could sit there and hold her and hug her. And then just leaving her when she was, I felt, calm when her brother came. I went and talked to the young men standing at the door. And then I realized there was a special reason why I was there, not only as a female, and that they actually could talk to a Jew. And they knew I was Jewish, and they knew it was Christmas, and that I didn't celebrate their holiday. But that didn't stop me from saying, so did you go to church this morning? Do you have a manger with Jesus in it? And it was so nice, and I listened to them. Two especially wanted to talk to me about how hard it was. And so I wrote quite a bit in that diary that night.
You sometimes forget that some of these guys, police officers, are very, although they've gone through the training, they're very young. And they have not had a lot of experience under their belt. And they're experiencing this as a 23-year-old or whatever their age may be. What are the differences, do you think, between older and younger, or is there a different way of approaching?
I know exactly what the difference is, because I remember the first death my husband saw, and it was on the Congress Street Bridge. A girl who had fallen from her bike, she was riding on the road, and a car, you could see the tire tracks in her body. And he ran to a phone. You asked me before who was his chaplain. It was me, because he ran to the phone and he called me. She happened to look like me, actually. And he was a young man, and I remember how devastated that was to him. You wouldn't have seen it in his face. He didn't move a muscle if you were looking at him, but I could hear it in his voice and when I listened when he came home. That's a young man who experiences and sees death that he told me about, as do the officers today, the first time there was a motorcycle accident, and we used to have Harleys. And he came upon a man who was dying, who had lost a limb. And he held him while he died. He was a young man. By the time you're 40s and 50s, the officers that I see who have seen those things, they handle it, I think, maybe outwardly differently, but I don't think it in any way impacts them any differently. It's still a human life, and you'll talk to them and they handle it differently when you're talking to them, but the impact is all the same. It touches their soul. I haven't seen one officer through my husband's work or in other situations that it means something to all of them to lose a life.